Well, welcome back to this three-part series on the 10 steps to giving and receiving forgiveness. This is, part two. And as you know, this three-part series is part of a 12-part series called Get on Board the Forgiveness Cruise, the Journey to be Stabilized. Well, my name is Mr. Advocate, and I'm an advocate for mother bears, and mother bears are all about stabilizing their cubs. So this is a great place for mother bears to be right now, because what I'm going to talk about will help them be stabilized as well as stabilize their cubs at the same time. Okay, let's just jump right into this. Basically, the first video talked about the first three steps, and they were to get prepared. And getting prepared for some people actually might take a year. It's not like 10 seconds and I'm prepared. So it involves understanding all the barriers that they have to giving and receiving forgiveness. It's understanding the multitude of benefits and what benefits they would love to receive, for themselves, and the 12 principles of forgiveness. And those are comprehensive and complex, in their own right. So that was the first step, prepare. Then what I suggested, the second step is a little different, and that is to put the violation that you have received or I have received on trial, our violation on trial. And gather all the evidence to demonstrate that we've been clearly violated, and actually have a verdict that the violator is guilty of violating us. And that was very important to establish that 100%, no wiggle room in that, whatsoever. And that's a major step. So now we're ready for step number 4. And so we now have a guilty person who violated us. And now we have to pronounce sentence. We have to then say, what damage did that violation do to us? It may be an economic one, it could be a relational one, it could be a physical one, it could be a variety of things. But we need to be able to quantify it, because at some point in time, like in number 8, when we get to it, we're going to have to talk about the payment of this. So in any type of court of law where justice, is served, you have to identify the sentencing or the damage. So the judge comes out and say you got 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or you got a fine of $1 or $5,000 or $50,000. So quantification is a little difficult, but that's a step. Is to go through a process of saying, what did this damage do to me? For example, somebody who's been damaged, by their parents. Wow, they're now 30, 40 years old. They've had all those years of being influenced by that damage that occurred, when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years, old, type of thing. And there's probably an economic value to it and a relationship value to it, etc. So coming up and trying to quantify the damage is a very important step. And again, remember, justice has to be served. That was one of the principles that we talked about. And the time or the cost, if you like, must fit the crime. So this is this pronouncing sentence. It's a major step. And again, when we get to number 8, you'll see it more clearly. The next step that we need to do is and this is we're in the process of forgiving, and I'm suggesting the next step is to be forgiven. Wow, that seems like a contradiction, but unfortunately that's the deal. To be able to forgive, we must actually have to go through the being forgiven process before we're really prepared to forgive, somebody else. So in essence, what we do is the same concept that we did when we were violated. We were putting that violation, that person, in essence, on trial to determine their guilt factor. So you know what? We have to do the same thing to ourselves. Somewhere in our life experiences, we've probably done some damage to somebody else. It doesn't have to be catastrophic, but there's some damage that we've done to somebody else. So we want to put that on trial. Where we violated somebody else, put that on trial, gather the evidence, determine the verdict, and do the sentencing. The first four steps that we just talked about in terms of forgiving, we needed to do the same thing to be forgiven. And this need thing I put over here because if you don't feel you ever need to be forgiven, that's actually going to be a barrier to forgive somebody else. So the need to be forgiven is very important. And you recall one of the principles that I talked about was this notion, and it's not really a notion, this reality that we have some flaws. And I was even up in the ante on it and called it some level of depravity. Even though we have great value, we still have flaws and we have some depravity in us. And I'm gonna get to that a little more in a couple minutes as well. So this step is to put ourselves through the forgiving process that we need to be forgiven. So once we've gone through, we have a sentencing here, we quantify the damage that we've done to somebody else, then we need to literally ask and receive forgiveness. We need to ask and receive, forgiveness. And so let's just jump into that in terms of what does that look like. And basically over here, there's a number of steps that must occur for that to happen. And one is we need to establish again that, we don't necessarily deserve to be forgiven. Ouch. We don't necessarily deserve to be forgiven. However, we must believe that we are worth receiving it. So these are sort of this integration of opposites. To be able to give forgiveness, you must be able to receive forgiveness yourself. And even though we don't deserve it, we need to believe that we're actually worth, receiving it. Also in this section here, in terms of receiving forgiveness, we must again go to that principle of the substitutional payor. In other words, we're going to receive the free gift of forgiveness. So who are we going to receive it from? Who in essence is going to step in and pay for the crime in essence that we receive? We're asking to receive forgiveness. And again, this is a free transaction. We're vindicated to give forgiveness. We actually have to pay for it. And that's why we had to quantify the damage, over here. What are we going to pay, for that violation? Anyway, so what I suggest is that it is sometimes hard. Who's going to forgive me? Is the person that I violated going to forgive me? Maybe they even passed on. Maybe we don't know where they are. Maybe they're not going to do it. So it's difficult there. So a lot of us, have some beliefs in a higher power. We look to a higher power to forgive us, and we must of course believe that higher power is in the business, in essence, of forgiving, or it's totally an academic process, So whatever your belief system, whatever your faiths, and I know that multiple faiths have the concepts of atonement and redemption and whatnot. It's not just any singular faith, group. So it's quite pervasive, which is good. So anyway, think of maybe of a higher power who you would go to and ask for, forgiveness. And then of course the key is to receiving it, to receiving this forgiveness, because there's a power associated with that, and that's the power I talked about that we need to be able to have so that we can give it. And that's part of giving forgiveness, that it takes a lot of power to do so. So we must receive that power first, and that's why we go to receiving forgiveness before we even attempt to give forgiveness. So we must receive that power, and then celebrate amazing grace. Celebrate amazing grace, that somebody has forgiven us without any cost to ourselves, even though we didn't deserve it, but they also believed that we were worth receiving it. The amount of power in this is just enormous. And I don't know if you know who wrote that song, Amazing Grace. I don't think most people know. But it was actually a slave trader. A slave trader wrote that song, and obviously he was doing bad things. He was shipping slaves from Africa, to the United States, and of course, many didn't survive. And when they arrived here, it wasn't exactly a pretty picture for them. So he was involved in all that transaction, and he finally, saw the need, to be forgiven over here and asked forgiveness and received it. And it was so powerful that he wrote this song, Amazing Grace. And to celebrate it, wow, somebody gave me forgiveness when I didn't deserve it, and they saw worth in it. And of course, it was a higher power for him, as well. Then, which we're going to talk about on the next video, then actually we're ready to decide to forgive. You see, all these steps here, all the way through 6, we haven't even made the decision to forgive. But you need to have experienced and understood all this before you're even to be in a position to forgive. And that's going to be on the next tape, on next video, as I'm going to go through, how do you actually make the decision? And what is the decision to forgive? And that's like a defining moment, right there. Not that all these other ones are simple. But anyways, again, remember I indicated, don't try to go through the process yet. This is, first of all, an educational process to understand what forgiveness is, both giving and receiving it. Again, the principles involved, the benefits involved, the barriers involved, the steps involved. We're not even finished yet. So again, just let's keep it at an academic level. And I am going to finish off with, once I finish, the 3-part series here, I'm going to do an overview video for you, which will include next steps and everything else. So that's going to be an important one. And it's not going to be what you think it's going to be. I think you're going to be surprised in what my action plan, my suggested action plan at least, will be, for you. Anyway, so next video that you'll see coming is the decision to forgive, and I'm going to go from 7 through 10 on that video, and that should be coming out very, very shortly. I've got it pretty well prepped for us. Again, thanks for listening. I always enjoy having you here and participating with you in getting stabilized. I think it's a lifetime journey. I'm still trying to be stabilized. I'm stabilized, but there's things that happen in life that can shift me and drift me. Storms show up and push me off course, and then I got to recalibrate and get myself back on course. So we're all in this journey together, and I'm glad we're doing it together. And so let's continue to do so. So I'll see you on the next tape. And in the meantime, have a great day, and let's be strong again together. Bye for now.